And now we turn to Daf Zion Omid Beis. Talmud Lomar. Now we can justify those redundant words in the pasuk. Ki kechatos ha'ashamu, ma'chatos tuma matan domim ve'burim l'gabi mizbeach. We have a din of haktorah se'burim, and of course the din is rikas adam on the mizbeach with regard to all hashamos is af asham mitzora ton matan domim ve'burim l'gabi mizbeach. So even though there are new unique dinim of matan bahanos with regard to Asham Mitzora, but all the other dinim that apply to all Ashamos, namely Matan Domim Al Gabi Mizbeach and Aktoras Emurim and Evarim, those apply to the Asham Mitzora as well. So the Asham Mitzora is not being taken out of the klal, Lidon B'Dover Chadash, because the Torah added the words Katas Hasham to tell you that we add additional new requirements that are piggybacked on top of the old requirements of any Asham. However, if the pasuk had not said Ki chachatas ha'asham, to put the Asham Mitzor back into the klal of all Ashamos, havamina l'may denofak nofak, l'may de lo nofak lo nofak. I would have said that the Torah took Asham Mitzor out of the klal, and whatever new dinim are written explicitly in the Torah with regard to Hasham Shamos, of Hasham Mitzorah, those dinim apply. And that's Matan Bahonos and Shchita B'Tzafon. But that which was not specified is left out. We omit it. So without the ribui of Kechatos HaHasham, we would not apply the dinim that are knowing in all Hashamos, namely Matan Domim Ve'Murim Al Gabi Mizbeach, to Asham Mitzora. Now let's see how we can find a parallel in the case of Eishes Ach. With regard to Eishes Ach and other arayos, the Mokom Yibum, the prat is not yotzim in a klal in a very uniform way. We're not going to derive from the klal on the prat or the prat on the klal. And therefore, we should come to the conclusion that when the Torah takes it out of the klal, meaning Eishes Ach is mutter b'makom yibum, that's only as far as Eishes Ach is concerned. That doesn't have any implication as far as other arayos is concerned. And that's called Lamai de Nofak Nofak, Lamai de Lo Nofak Lo Nofak. Just like in Hasham Mitzora, we're going to say that the Hasham Mitzora only has the dinim of Matan Bahanos and not Matan Domim Al Gabi Mizbeach, if not for the extra pasuk Kechatos Ka'asham. And therefore, once again, we're back to square one. We still don't have an answer to our basic question. Why do we need a leah to teach me that in the case of Achos Isha, the mitzvah of Yibum does not apply? What do I need that for? What was the Havamina to say that the mitzvah of Yibum would override the erev of Achos Isha? Only Eishes Ach was taken out of the klal, and that's called Lilamed Al Atzmo Yotza. Lidon B'Dover Chadash. Ella, says the Gemara, I would have derived all arayos with an equation, what's called a binyanav, from Eishes Ach. Ma Eishes Ach, which is an erev with a chi of karetz, if there was no mitzvah of yibum, is miyavma, yet the Torah says muteres liyavam. So we're going to override the Isser erev of Eishes Ach for the sake of the mitzvah of yibum. Afachos isha tisyabe. Even though achos isha, your wife's sister, is asur b'isur kares, but the Torah in the case of yibum would be matir b'isur kares. And then we go ahead and we're going to equate Eshes Ach and Achos Ishto with all arayos. And that's called a binyan av. So in all arayos, we're going to assume that we override the erva, the Easter erva for the sake of the mitzvah of Yibum, and therefore the Torah had to say Oleh to teach us that even when there's a mitzvah of Yevamot of Oleh, nevertheless the Easter erva of Eshesach Oleh, because it says Isha lachos osikach litzor legalos evros Oleh b'chayeh applies, and she's asur ala yavam, she's p'tur min hayavam min hayibum min hachalitza, and from thence we're going to derive all arayos that they don't fall for Yibum and Chalitza. So the Gemara says, you want to derive all arayos from a Memotzinu, from a Binyan Av, from Eshes Ach, Midami. Hasam Chadi Surah, Hachatrei Surah. In the case of Eshes Ach, the Torah was marked through one single Isa, one Erva. Now you add a piggyback of a second Erva. She's not only Eshes Ach, but also Achos Ishto. How can you say that for the sake of Yibum, we're going to override two Isur? So the Gemara answers, Mal de Tema, I would have said if not for the Pasuk Oleh, Choel since, Ubi Ishtere, but if you last Yavam Ishtere, the Torah was Mater Eshes Ach, is Ishtere, the Torah was Mater also Achos Isha and other Isure Averos, Arayos. So we now have introduced a brand new halachic principle, which is called Hoil v'ishtere ishtere. Mina temra damrin hol v'ishtere. What's your source for this principle of Hoil v'ishtere ishtere? And now the Gemara is going to introduce a source in Mitzorah for Hol v'ishtere ishtere, and that's the case of Mitzorah, who's also a Balkari. So we have an overlap of two tumas in one person. He's both a Mitzorah and a Balkari. And the question is, the Torah allowed a Mitzorah to enter into the Azara for the purpose of his Tara. But now we have an additional tumah. He's also at the same time a Balkari. And we're going to apply the principle of Hol v'ishtere ishtere, that once the Torah allowed a Mitzorah for the sake of his Tara to enter into the Azara, even if there's another tumah, an additional tumah to topple it, namely to top it off with Balkari, that too would be mutter and allow him to enter into the Azara. And here we have to mention that there are three levels of tumah. There's a Tomei who has not yet jumped into the mikvah. There's a Tomei who has jumped into the mikvah, but he still has not experienced Herev Shemsho. The sun has not set. And then we have someone who already was Tovel. He had Herev Shemesh, but he hasn't brought his karbonos. And that's called Mechusar Kapara. Zav, Zava, Yoledes, and Mitzorah. Okay, now, with regard to the Tara of a Mitzorah, after we see the Kohen determines that his Taras is healed, he's got to bring two tziporim, two birds. One is shechted, and they take the dam and they do hazah on his body, and they take the other tzipor and they send it live, free, to roam the skies. Then we do giluach of kol sa'aro. We remove all the hair from his body. Then he's tovel mituma. So he starts counting 7 days. On the 7th day, he again does a second giluach to remove all his hair. Then he goes into the mikvah. He becomes a tful yom until Erev Shemesh. And after Erev Shemesh, he's tar. He can even eat truma if he's a Kohen. But he's still mechusar kapara, and until the Yom Hashmini, when he brings his karbanos, he's not allowed to enter into the Beis Hamikdash. He's not allowed to eat kosher. This Sanya we learned in a brisa mitzora shechal yom hashmini shelo be erev Shabbat erev HaPesach. So the 8th day, which is the day on which the mitzora, after he experienced all 7 days of Tara and he went to mikvah and he had erev Shemesh, now he has to bring his korbanos. But it's on the 14th of Nisan erev Pesach. V'ra keri bo bayom, and he became a bal keri on that very day. V'tar, v'taval, he was tovel in a mikveh to be matar himself from keri. So he's called a Tvul Yom until Lila. They're going to allow him to enter in and stand in the Machna Leviyah for the purpose of Matan Adam al Bahonosa. Sha'omru chacham afal pishein Tvul Yom acher nichnas. No other Tvul Yom is allowed, is permitted entry into the Machna Leviyah. But Zed, this Tvul Yom, who's also Mitzorah, and it's the 8th day of his Tara, nichnas. He's allowed to enter into the Azorah for the Nesina Midam Asham Mitzorah al Bahonos. If he wouldn't be allowed to enter into the Machna Leviyah for the purpose of Matan Bahonos, then he won't be able to bring his karbanos, and therefore he's still Mechusar Kapar. He won't be able to eat the Karban Pesach. And a Mechusar Kapar, as we said before, is not allowed to eat Basar Kodshim. And Basar Pesach is included in Basar Kodshim. It's therefore Mutav Sheyavo Eseh. The mitzvah say of Pesach Sheyesh Bo Kares, if somebody doesn't bring his Karban Pesach, he's Chayv Kares, V'yidcha Aseh She'ein Bo Kares. The essay of Shiluach Machnos is not a Chiyuv Kares. There's no Chiyuv Kares for a Tvul Yom or a Mechusar Kapara if they go into the Machna Leviyah, unless they go into the Machna Shechina. This guy is not going into the Machna Shechina. He's going to what's called Sharan Nikanor, which is Machna Leviyah. And then he's Moshe Bahonosav L'toch HaZorah, and we can be mitar him from his mitzorah. Then he'll bring his Karban Pesach. So we see that for the purpose of Karban Pesach, he doesn't have to enter into the Azorah. He could send his Karban Pesach with a shliach, and in the evening after Ariv Shamcho, he can be mitar legamre mitumas kerio, and then he can eat the Karban Pesach. V'yomer Rabbi Yochanan, Var Torah afilu asay lesbei. There's not even an Isser asay for him to enter into the Machna Leviyah, shenemar, and we derive this from Divrei Yovim. Vayamod Yoshafat Bekal Yehuda b'fnei hachotzer hachadosh. My chotzer chadosha, Rabbi Yochanan, zeh harabayis shechidshu b'dvorim shal halacha v'gazru v'yamru Tvul Yom lo yikonis l'machna Leviyah. So the entire Isser for a Tvul Yom to enter the Machna Leviyah is only midrabanan. And in the case where he has to eat his Karban Pesach, which is a kares, therefore lo hamidu chachamis divrei makar kares, and they weren't gozer on the mitzorah who saw Keri that he should not enter in there for the purpose of bringing his karbanos on Erev Pesach. We don't want him to be mavatil himself from the Karban Pesach. Okay, so let's make a note of where we got up to here for today. We're up to the Omar Ula, which Amir Hashem B'li Neder will pick up tomorrow, which is 2 lines before the end of Daf Zayin Amid Beis. Amir Hashem, we still are a little bit ahead of the Daf Yomi, which is great news from Masechet Yevamot, as you know. Okay, then I'll wish everyone a great day and a great week. Thank you so much.